Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Andrea, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to talk to you because I don't think we've interviewed any copywriters yet, and I think you'll have so much to share for our listeners. But I always like to go back to the beginning and talk a little bit about your connection with France. Now, I know you spend summers here. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have a daughter, and we wanted her to learn a language, and it turned out that the easiest language, even though I live in South Florida, was actually to learn French. And so we started when she was relatively little. And then after the pandemic, I decided I was kind of itching to just get out and go somewhere. And I planned a trip to France, and we ended up staying for several weeks to do a summer camp there. And now it's just kind of become an annual thing. We go, I pack up my business and just work remotely for about a month. And we go to central France, to Clermont-Ferrand. And it's amazing. I love it. It's just like a different pace of life and a chance to we're starting to feel like we really get to know it. And we have our favorite restaurant, our favorite bookstore. It's great.
Yeah. And I feel like as a creative, it probably like inspired you too for your future work. You know, I was reading on your website, you always use an English, or you never use an English word where a French one will do. I love that. That's so fun.
100%. Yeah. And it's just as a creative moving around a little bit, it makes you look at things with fresh eyes, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We need to switch it up, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about your work as a copywriter. Like, how did you get into this profession?
I feel like I have the same story as every copywriter, which is that I did not graduate from college intending to be a copywriter. I kind of fell backwards into it. I got my original degrees in translation, and I worked as a translator for a while, and I really liked it. But in the middle of the pandemic, I've been doing a lot of film and TV work for marketing and that sort of thing, all kinds of movies. And it was really interesting and great fun. And then they stopped filming anything, and I was kind of out of work. So I had done a little bit of writing here and there, because if you do one thing with words, people will ask you to do another thing with words. It just kind of follows logically. And I started working with a friend who ran a small business doing SEO and web design and helping him write some website copy. And it just gradually flowed from there. Because of some of my previous jobs, I had the experience I needed with SEO and with brand voice to bring that in. And then gradually I've niched down over the years so that now I do mostly website copywriting, occasionally some emails, and I work primarily with people in creative industries, especially photographers and wedding professionals. So my clients all have these amazing creative jobs, and I feel like I get to come along for the ride with them.
Definitely. And I think that as creatives and as small business owners, we're wearing so many hats all the time. So it's always nice when we can outsource some of the stuff that we're just not that good at. We don't really understand the best way to do it. So talk a little bit about your process as a copywriter.
It's funny because as a copywriter, people kind of imagine you sitting down at your computer with a blank Google Doc and just starting to write. But the reality is that good copywriting is so much more research, and then you do the writing. Sometimes it's 60, 70, 80% research. So I spend a lot of time with my clients learning about their business, asking them questions about their goals, the voice they want for their brand, reading all the Instagram captions they've written and the blog posts they've written to get a sense of who they are. And then also researching their market, their ideal clients, and their competitors to kind of see what space we can carve out for them and how we can really highlight what makes them different and unique. And especially with my clients, it's a lot about highlighting their artistry and highlighting the experience they create for their clients, because they are working oftentimes with people who are investing quite a bit of money in their services, and they want to feel really well cared for. So I research all of that, take a ton of notes, And then I sit down and I start writing copy for the website. It usually comes before the design. So usually I'll draft the copy and then my clients will work with a designer, or sometimes I'm on a team with a designer and the designer will take what I've written and it's kind of a canvas to play with, and they start designing an entire website around that.
And what's the hardest part of finding people's voice? You hear this all the time in marketing, like you want to have your voice, your style, and how do you do your job?
I feel like one thing that I work on with my clients, and it's something I've been through myself, is that if you've had a traditional job, you sometimes resist being yourself a little bit. You are told not to put too much personality into yourself when you're writing emails and you're working in corporate and that sort of thing. And you have to have this mindset shift when you own your own business, because your personality is some of what drives people to work with you, especially as a creative. And especially for many of my clients, they're not just creating a product for someone where they're detached from their client. They are working alongside their client. They are with them on a, high energy, emotional time of their lives. And so they need to show their personality because people are really looking for someone they can feel comfortable around. But how to get there, it involves a lot of reading, and then it also involves a lot of talking to someone, because sometimes people open up verbally in a way that they wouldn't in writing. People always tell me, they're like, I hire you to do the writing. So I'll ask them to brain dump, and I said we're not going to judge you on anything you write when I ask you questions. So we'll brain dump both in written form, and then also we'll get on a call and we'll just talk through things. And a lot of times people are more relaxed and open up, and I can get a sense of who they are and how they need to sound that way.
And also with the internet and the cancel culture and all that, I think, have you found a lot of people are kind of nervous to fully present themselves or their voice, or are they saying the wrong thing? I mean, what are your feelings about that when trying to write as a person?
I don't come across that too often, but I think one thing that we all have to take on board as creatives is you have to accept that you cannot be for absolutely every person. And that's actually okay. I tell people, like, if you're a wedding professional, a photographer, say in a big city, you literally cannot take every wedding that goes on in the city. You can't. There's just not enough hours in the day. So you have to accept that you're not going to work with everyone. And that's okay, because a lot of times the people that are turned off by who you really are the people who you weren't going to collaborate well with anyhow. They're the people who just aren't a good fit for you. And so, in the beginning, when we start our businesses, we're all feeling scrappy and like we have to be everything to everyone lest we lose out on work. But as you progress in your business, you realize that you have room to lose a few people, and that's okay. Not enough hours in the day to work with everyone.
Yeah, and that's a really good feeling when we can start moving into that part of our business where it's like, okay, you're not my client, that's okay, and you'll find your person to work with too, and you help people like weed through that through finding people's voices. And talk a little bit about some of the top mistakes that creatives make when writing copy. What are some common things we're doing wrong?
One of the main things I always tell people is to write focused on your client, not on yourself. So of course, when you're creating a website for yourself, you have to share information about who you are, the business that you run, the way you do your work. But at the end of the day, your client wants to be able to envision themselves working with you. And so a lot of times, if you can shift your copy from I focused to you focused, it will make a huge difference in helping them really envision this future of working with you and getting this experience that you're going to deliver. You don't want your website to read like a CV or something like that, unless you're actually a professor, in which case disregard all my advice. But if you're a creative, you want them to have a sense of what their experience is going to be like. So that's one of the main things. And we all start out doing it. Even when I'm writing copy, a lot of times, one of my main revisions is to go through and look for the places where I've started a sentence with I and try to figure out how we can reword that to share the same information, but focusing on the reader instead of the writer. Another thing that people do is they often focus on the product, but you also really want to talk about the experience that you give your clients. It's not just about we talk about features and benefits a lot in copywriting, and the features are the actual bullet point things you get when you buy a product or a service. But the benefits are what people are looking for. They need to know the features. Don't leave them out. But the central focus of your copy is the benefits. How is this product or service going to affect them? What transformation will they get? What feeling will they have when they use it? That's what they're really looking for you to tell them, whether you're selling, say, a course that teaches people to tap into their own creativity. What does that outcome look like for them if they take your course? So yes, of course, give them the bullet points of what they're buying. Everyone deserves to know that, but then also go a little bit deeper and tap into the feelings that they're going to have and the benefits that they're going to get out of this. We always talk about that in copywriting is features versus benefits, and you have to have both. There's room for both.
Definitely. And I think that's what, whenever we land on these sales pages, it's like what really pushes us to that final step to buy is, like you said, combining those two things.
Yeah, exactly. There has to be like a storytelling element or something to that. I mean, people respond really well to stories, right? And as creatives, we gather stories, we think in terms of stories. And I think one thing that's been beneficial for me, and I notice it happening with a lot of writers and other creatives whose work I enjoy, is I keep a bank of stories, just things that happen to me in day-to-day life, or sometimes I'll remember something from when I was a child, when I was, at my first job, when I was in college, just funny little stories. And I keep like a little bank in kind of a Notion document where I write those things down, just one or two sentences to remind me. And then if I'm feeling stuck, I can turn back to that bank and look for a story that I can tell people and see if I can tie that into something that they'll relate to in their business or in their creative life. So I really recommend, sometimes, honestly, I make myself sound really organized saying I have a Notion doc, but realistically, a lot of times all this stuff lives in the Notes app on my phone, which is kind of a disaster zone.
Yeah, I think we all use the Notes app. And also I email myself a lot. I'm like, if I need to remember to do something, I just send myself an email. It's so helpful.
I do voice memos to myself too.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm sitting in car line at my child's school and it's like I have an idea and I just whip out my phone and voice memo it to myself. And it's one of the best ways to like talk through something. And I do feel like that's actually one thing that people don't give enough credit is that sometimes the first round of getting an idea down, quote unquote, on paper is not actually writing it. Sometimes you need to talk through your creative ideas, whether you're writing your own website copy or helping a client. Sometimes it's super beneficial to voice it to yourself, see if you can get it transcribed somehow. And then you kind of have the foundation of what you want to say and you can finesse that a little bit more.
And what are some other recommendations you have for people who are just starting to come up with ideas or things they want to write about to sell? Are there any other recommendations you have other than, keeping little notes of stories? Are there other things we can do to help ourselves or our copywriter?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you can provide your copywriter with stuff that you've written that you're really comfortable with, I want to know what you sound like when you're working with someone that you're familiar with and that you feel really at ease with. So, sometimes my clients, when I ask them to provide me material they've written, they might share emails that they've written with a client or something like that. Anything you can give your copywriter will be helpful. People will often say, oh, I'm just babbling. I went off on a tangent. And it's like, no, that's all helpful to me. If you're writing your own copy, another one of my favorite practices is to simply let things rest, to write your own copy and then give it a week and come back to it if you have the time, especially if it's a larger project, like you're writing your own website, or perhaps you're writing some emails to launch a product in the future. Write what you can and then come back to it a day later, or if you can give yourself a week, it will be amazing what you'll see in your copy. You'll see the good parts and you'll also see the parts that need changing if you just give it a little bit of time. I find that really, really important. Whenever I can build that into my own work with my clients, I prefer to do so, even if it's just to let something sit for a weekend and then deliver it on Monday. It gives it a fresh, it just gives me a fresh pair of eyes to look at something with.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great advice. It's kind of like bread, you gotta let it sit for a little while so it can
exactly.
taste the best.
A cake that's a little bit better the second day, like the flavor kind of develops a little bit. Yeah, you got to give yourself time. And also sometimes we are so hard on ourselves when we write for ourselves and giving yourself a little bit of time and space to process, you'll often come back and you'll be able to be like, oh yeah, that's a really good line I wrote.
Talk about some of the differences between writing copy for a website versus writing copy on our social media.
So I do feel usually it works for most people to be a couple degrees more casual on social media than on your website. Usually social media also plays like a slightly different role in what we think of as like a sales funnel, which is basically, without going into too many details, how people come into contact with you. So oftentimes people who come across you on social media, they're a little bit newer to your world. Maybe they have just come across you. They've just found your profile through the Explore page or by browsing, or they were recommended. And so they're still getting to know you in your world. You can share a little bit about your personal life, see if they identify with that. But definitely a little bit more casual. Your website is going to be a little bit more goal focused and sales focused, depending on what your ultimate goal is for your clients. And usually you want your website to have every page of your website to have a specific goal. So maybe it's for someone to book a call with you, to fill out your inquiry form, or if you're selling, say, a digital product, it's to get them to buy. Social media people are usually going to be a little bit earlier on in the buying process. And so you kind of write wanting to get them to get to know you and think, wow, this person's really interesting. Okay, now I'm going to click on their website. Then when they're on the website, you're still writing with personality, but you're also writing with a more specific goal in mind for them.
That's great advice, because if they're following you on social media already, they're kind of like, oh, I already kind of know this person. I've been listening to them for a while now.
Yes, exactly.
And talk a little bit about SEO. Some people might know something about it, but search engine optimization, talk about the importance of copywriting with SEO.
Yeah, I could go on all day about this. As much of an effort as I put into writing creative, fun to read copy, at the same time, I would be doing my clients a disservice if their websites weren't findable in search engines. So you'll hear all kinds of different opinions on that, but I'm a firm believer in the importance of SEO because it's really an investment for the long-term health of your business, getting found in Google. I say Google. I know there's other search engines, but I'm biased. I don't ever use them. And realistically, what you do for Google will work for other search engines too. But it's an investment in your business in the long term. It is not a short-term game. It is something that as you learn about it, and there are resources to learn a little bit about SEO and start small, maybe with optimizing a page or two on your website and starting to blog. Gradually, it will bring in more traffic to your website. And gradually that will help you increase your sales, your conversions, and that sort of thing. The thing about social media, and I use social media for my business too, so this is not a criticism, but it's simply not a platform that you can guarantee results on for the next 5 years or something like that. You don't know if, for example, I'm in the States and there's all this talk about TikTok getting banned and that sort of thing. Or I'm on Instagram, and we all know Instagram changes its algorithm every 5 minutes, and what worked a few weeks ago might not be working. So I always encourage everyone to invest in their website, invest in their SEO so that they can continue to build this other source. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about some recent changes in Google and how they're affecting bloggers, but realistically, they affect people who are blogging for a living. People, say someone running a recipe blog or something like that, who really depends on super high traffic and is running ads. For those of us who are running a service-based business, even a product-based business, it's still really beneficial to blog. It can really be a great way to target searchers. People are still searching on Google. Even like in my industry, one thing that gets debated a lot is whether luxury clients, people with hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on a wedding, are searching on Google. And the answer is yes. Even though they hire wedding planners and look at, select vendor lists, at the end of the day, they still search on Google too. So I'm a huge advocate. I recommend just starting small. A lot of the big companies that offer tools for keyword research and that sort of thing, they have hugely robust blogs that will teach you the basics of SEO. And realistically, most of us need to know just the basics to get started.
I think that's great advice, because it feels really overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people. Like, how do I do SEO? What is the best way? Are there any websites you recommend to learn some of this stuff?
If you are actually, honestly, it would work for anyone who's not just a photographer. There's a website called Fuel Your Photos, and they do some really great, they have some great blog posts that are really solid introductions to SEO. What's a keyword? How do I find one? How do I incorporate it on a web page or a blog post? And like I said, I think their advice works for anyone, especially because as creatives, we're not often targeting, like a huge keyword. We're not trying to occupy the same space in Google that Target is taking up or that Apple is taking up. So with a little bit of advice, you can target the keywords that your people are searching. So that's a resource I recommend. And then there's also, oh man, now I'm forgetting the name. There's another good one. I'm going to give it to you to link in the resources because I'm drawing a blank on the name of it right now. But there's a lot of great free resources. What I want to say is no one should feel like in the beginning they have to pay to learn the basics of SEO. There's so much excellent free stuff out there. Consume it. And then if you're still struggling, there's coaches and people who can consult with you for a little bit. But honestly, I've never paid to learn SEO. The free stuff is really valuable.
I think that's great advice, and we'll definitely link all of that in the show notes, so check it out, guys. And what's something you wish more people knew about copywriting?
Well, one of the jokes that we always make is we get confused with copyright lawyers who do trademarks and copyrights and that sort of thing. So it is definitely not that. They would not let me be a lawyer. That would do no one any good. But also just that it's not... Actually, one thing I'd say is that we struggle to write our own copy. And so I have a ton of empathy with my clients when they come to me and they say, I really want to do this, but it's just hard for me. It is so hard for me to look at my own business with like appropriate perspective. You're in the weeds with your own business, and it is so hard to get a handle on what you do well and what you do differently that even though I have a really good process for doing it for my clients, it's totally different when it comes to you. And so I always want my clients to feel like I know where they're coming from. And I have so much sympathy for them because I've been through it before. And every time I update my website, I go through it again. So that's something that, it's not, we do not sit down and write our own website magically. Like it's just not something that happens.
How often should we be updating our websites?
I recommend that you take a look through your website, maybe once a quarter, maybe once every 6 months, just to make sure that you're still offering the same services, your pricing is still the same, any timely related information that you have on there, like say when you're booking for, you go ahead and give that an update. But yeah, that would be my recommendation, is to do just a little check through once every 3 to 6 months and make sure. It really depends on like how much timeliness you put into your website. A lot of my clients are making small tweaks every month or two because they just want to keep their information about their availability up to date. And also for a lot of my clients, they blog regularly and they want to consistently update, say, the blog posts that are on the homepage, or they tweak a photo here or there. If you're interested in blogging, and blogging is not totally my area of expertise, but if you're interested in blogging, it can be really beneficial to put out one blog every month or two. One of my really smart SEO friends says you don't have to blog more than once a month. So don't feel the pressure to crank out 4 or 5 blogs a month. One a month is doable. And those 12 blog posts within a year will do wonders for your SEO.
And when it comes to writing blogs, are there any places that would teach us how to write a better blog for SEO? Are there certain things we should be doing when we're blogging as far as writing goes?
Yeah, definitely. With blogs, it's a little bit more important to really start from the point of view of what the keyword you want to target is and work backwards from there, because for most blog posts, their value is going to be in SEO. Usually I kind of try to categorize blog posts in a couple different ways. Like I sometimes, for my own businesses, I've been mapping out my blogging plan for the year. I think of them as like some behind the scenes of how I run my business. Those are just things I can share with people. They give a little insight into my business. Some are educational, but not necessarily for SEO. And then some are very specifically targeting an SEO keyword. And that's where I recommend people start. So you can use, there's another resource called Answer the Public, and it's not totally free, but you get 3 free queries a day, I think. And you can go in and type in one or two words about the type of business you run and find out the kinds of questions people are asking about that. Another great way to do that is Google Trends. That's completely free, and you can search some keywords related to your business and see what's trending and use those as a way to give yourself some topics to write about and then go from there. It would be fun to write about whatever we want to, but the reality of it is that that should only be a percentage of your blog. A huge percentage of it should be focusing on getting traffic to your website.
I think that's great advice. And talk a little bit about copy catfishing on your website. I know you mentioned that on your social media. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's actually my friend Candace coined that, and it's so genius. I told her the second she said it, I'm like, I'm swiping that. I'm using it everywhere. It is just the fact that you want your website to reflect how you're going to show up in real life. So one, it has two benefits. One, you don't want to feel like your business persona is like this ill-fitting costume that you have to put on when you go to work. You want it to feel natural and authentic to you. Just you'll do better work. You'll be more comfortable if you can be yourself. But then the flip side of it is you want your clients to know what they're going to get. And if your website copy is like the example I always use is if your website copy is super prim and proper, and then you show up this is, an example for my clients, you show up on someone's wedding day and you're cursing up a storm, they're going to be like, wait a second, what happened to the person on that website, or vice versa. So you just want it to be an accurate enough reflection of your personality that when you show up, when you sit down for a Zoom call, when you meet someone in person, they're going to be like, oh yeah, you're pretty much exactly the way you said you were. And it's hard, right? Like sometimes it's hard to be ourselves, but I really recommend it. I think all of my clients, when they can take a deep breath and relax into who they're presenting themselves as, they've been really satisfied with the results.
Definitely great advice too. And like you said, it can be tough sometimes, but then you have people like you, or the more you do it, the more you get used to it. I like that writing one blog a month, because sometimes we feel like we have to be blogging like every day, and it feels good to know like the bar is low.
The bar is super low. And I mean, even if you did half that, you're still doing, if you did 0 last year and you do 6 this year, you're still way ahead of where you were. All of it, I like to think of it rather as like a schedule, rather than a schedule you stick to. It's like a little deposit in the bank, like a deposit in your marketing bank. And you can just keep making those deposits when it works for you.
I think that's great advice. And how would you define creativity in your own words?
Oh, wow. That's a really interesting question. I think it's the ability to just kind of spin up something that wasn't there before, to imagine this world or tap into this current that's there, but hasn't necessarily for me been put into words. It makes me think of, I'm reading this series of novels with my daughter, the Moomin series. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're a series of books written in Finnish originally.
Oh, never heard of them.
Oh, they're so charming, but they're very surreal, and they're all about, some of them are woodland animals, but then a lot of them are just these imagined kind of creatures. And I just think a little bit about world building and creating this incredible world. And that's what I aim to do every day. I've been working on, I'm taking a course and working on some things about my own marketing. And for me, what I'm really trying to do for my clients is turn the tangible. So for them, maybe they create florals for weddings. They take photographs, they plan an experience, taking those tangibles and turning them into the intangibles of words. That's kind of the business that I'm in, is taking something that's real and trying to conjure it with words.
I love that. It's really beautiful. And talk about where people can connect with you, hire you for copywriting, and keep in touch.
So my website is super simple. It's andreashah.com. And then I'm also active on Instagram, Andrea Shah Copy, and the same username on Threads, which I'm finding really fun to play around with because it's all text-based and it suits me very well. I love Instagram, but sometimes I don't want to come up with a pretty photo, and then Threads is fun to just relax.
Thank you so much for all your valuable information today, and we'll share all of that in the show notes, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.